Radio
99.1 FM.
Hours 20 in Guyana and right across the Eastern Caribbean. Of course, you're listening to us right here on Kaieteur Radio 99.1, 99.5 FM. Hello there, wherever you're joining us from at this moment. And of course, let us tell you can stream us live on Facebook at Kaieteur Radio, or you can listen to us online at www.kaieteurnewsonline.com. We welcome you to yet another edition of the Elections Watch. Of course, a special edition of the Elections Watch. You know, we've been day in, day out, keeping your company and letting you know what is happening on the ground. As you know, the Chief Justice would have ruled on that matter today. And of course, we're going to continue to bring you update as to what happens. Joining us in studio this evening is former Member of Parliament and former Member of Parliament, Mr. Joseph Hamilton. And he's also a candidate for the People's Progressive Party Civic. And joining him also is Bishop Juan Edghill, who is a former Member of Parliament also, and is a candidate for the People's Progressive Party Civic. And interviewing them this evening will be your host or moderator for the Elections Watch this evening, Mr. Leonard Gildari. Gentlemen, good evening.
Good evening. Good evening, Joshua.
Good
thank
evening.
you.
Good evening.
Thank you very much, Joshua. And gentlemen, welcome. And so we have this evening with us. Well, it's been a long day, a long couple of days, I could tell you. We've been at it. As we know today, would have had a very critical decision or some orders issued by the Chief Justice Roxanne George. Those orders are very critical in the sense that she's ordered that the returning officer Region 4 or Division Voting District 4, and that is claimant Mingo, that he should go back to the drawing board in the presence of the persons as is outlined by the law to have his declaration be done, or the tallying or the tabulation of the various polling stations in Region 4, 800 plus of them, be done before a number of persons. And that is supposed to happen tomorrow morning. It has been closed for a couple of days. That is the returning office at Ashman's Building High and Hatfield Street. And as we know, since last week, elections was on Monday. It was thrown into controversy after 9 regions were declared and Region 4 was not. That was halted after the People's Progressive Party went to court. The People's Progressive Party is saying that Mr. Mingo, as a returning officer, unlawfully made a declaration when he should not have. In fact, he was supposed to, he bypassed several procedures or systems that were in place, and they're saying that that is unlawful. They went to the court and the court has ruled. So obviously there are various takes on this. A few moments back, we would have had 2 candidates for the APNO AFC coalition, and that is former Minister of Public Security Kemraj Ramjatan and Roysdale Ford, another lawyer, senior counsel. Both of them are candidates, and they were here giving the takes. And there's a couple of takeaway from that, gentlemen, which is one, that tomorrow the ball is in the hands of the referee. That is a returning officer, claimant Mingo. Although he was found to be operating or made that declaration unlawful last week, the court would have allowed him to return to do his job, a second chance at doing his job tomorrow. And so the ball is in his hands tomorrow, according to the 2 candidates over here, and they're saying that he will abide by whatever the court says. The party will abide by the court, or the coalition will abide by what the court says. They will accept the results. They believe that the trajectory of the project of what was declared so far would have put them comfortably in lead of the PPP overall for all the regions, and they have always done well with Region 4, our District 4, and with the voters turnout that large, it would have put them well ahead. Gentlemen, I'm going to ask you, Bishop or Mr. Hamilton, could you tell us what are some of the major things that came out today, and maybe if you could respond, and if you could ask me to, if you did not look at the program, I could probably give a synopsis again of what the two gentlemen said. But could you give us some of the takeaways from that court decision today by the Chief Justice, Roxanne George?
Importantly, Leonard, is everything must be followed by the letter of the law. And it is alarming that two lawyers can come to this program and say to the Guyanese people that Mr. Mingo, who they call the referee, apparently they are suggesting that the ball in his hand and he can do anything with the ball. He can only do, as a statutory officer, the things that are prescribed by the law for him to do. And, you know, Rosedale Ford has been saying, I am told, that Mingo can apparently return tomorrow to do the verification and tabulation with the spreadsheet that had the controversy. I mean, how could you say that when and we can go to the Chief Justice orders, that the verification and tabulation must be done pursuant to the statements of old. That is the document, not a spreadsheet. A spreadsheet is an operational tool after a tabulation of the votes from the statement of poll. Secondly, they have also lied to the Guyanese people by suggesting, Mr. Royce Ford, I'm told, that, and some of the APNO people have said, that other regions' spreadsheet was used to tabulate and verify the votes. Fallacy and lies. Bishop Edghill, he was the agent for Region 10. He can speak definitively about that. But in all the regions, the spreadsheet was not used in the 9 regions. For that matter, the regions, what they had, Leonard, is they had a board established, whereas they reside, as the RO was going through the numbers, it was reflected on the board. Subsequent to that, when the numbers were certified and validated by all parties and all the people who were there, that is when you come to the area where now the SOP is inputted in the computer system. But none of that happens before the declaration is done in a manual way by the returning officer, utilizing the statement of poll that he has, he or she has in their hand. And further, if minor discrepancies, and in some instances you had discrepancy of 1 or 2 votes or so, all of those things were clarified and verified, and you went along. So it's a blatant lie, firstly, for these two gentlemen who are attorneys to say to the Guyanese people that apparently Mingo could pick up anything tomorrow and utilize it and start this process. Look, the consequential orders, it is clear at 9B. It says that in the interest of transparency, but taking into consideration the need for urgency, the returning officer and/or the deputy returning officer for District 4 is to decide whether the process of ascertaining the total votes cast in favor of each list of the district by adding up the votes recording in favor of the list in accordance with the statement of poll delivered pursuant to Section 83 of the Representation of the People Act, Chapter 103. What 83 is? 83 is the chain where the presiding officer who sign off on these statement of poll at the polling place, when all is compiled together, the deputy returning officer for the location would collect all of these presiding officer statement of poll, put them in a sealed envelope, and will transfer two sets, one for the RO of the district and one for the chief elections officer. So the statement of poll that we have in our possession is not just with the returning officer. It is also with the chief elections officer. And at the level of GCOM, there's another process that, again, GCOM brought on halt, where you have the chief elections officer along with commissioners who are signing off on the verification of the statement of poll, utilizing whatever watermark or seal they have to ensure that the statement of poll delivered to GCOM, to the chief elections officer, it is authentic, so as not to have the situation you had the last time around, where fake statement of poll was introduced into the milieu. So it is total fabrication and lies. One, that spreadsheets were used in the 9 regions to deal with the tabulation and verification. And secondly, Mr. Mingo couldn't return tomorrow morning to the falsified.
Was any spreadsheet used in any other regions?
No, that's a
None at all.
None at all. The spreadsheet came into being, Leonard, after.
When you recorded the numbers as identified by
The returning officer. From the statement of poll.
For example, in Region 10, the counting agent received a blank paper with boxes. As the RO opens the statements of poll and he calls numbers, you record your numbers. So at the end, you could count and verify. Not you being given a spreadsheet with numbers and you don't know where those numbers come from. It was the statement, numbers from the statement of poll that was recorded in boxes that you could eventually call a spreadsheet. But what is important here, Leonard, and the Guyanese people must know, what the two gentlemen, both of them lawyers, and one a senior counsel, and Mr. Ford is no ordinary lawyer. He's a brilliant man. I've had dealings with him. He's a very brilliant man. What he's seeking to do is to make a case to discredit any objections that the PPPC will make tomorrow about the introduction of fictitious numbers in the process. Now, the first thing I want to put on record, Mr. Roysdale Ford, senior counsel, is a candidate to the poll for the APNU AFC. In court, I attended every hearing on this matter. Mr. Roysdale Ford was the principal assistant and advisor to Mr. Neil Boston, who appeared for Mr. Mingo, Mr. Lowenfield, and Jacob. That's a conflict of interest. You're a candidate and you're advising the lawyer who's defending 3 parties on the course the case should take. And that is not something that could be disputed. That was done in full view of the media. It was done in full view of the international community. It was done in full view of the Chief Justice and all the lawyers.
Were any objections raised?
There was no objection raised. He didn't address the court, but he was the one finding the authorities and all the rest of it. So it was clear that he was part of the legal team that was defending Lowenfield, Mingo, and Jacob. Secondly, in this hearing and determination, it was the contention of Mr. Boston, and all Guyanese heard, that the spreadsheet could have been used. It was the contention of Mr. Douglas Mendes, the counsel for the applicant, that the process according to Section 84 is the statement of poll. And the abandonment of the use of the statements of poll after 421 statements of poll were verified and a use of a spreadsheet to come up with the final number was illegal. It was not allowed according to the law, and the Chief Justice ruled that the declaration that was derived from the use of the spreadsheet must be null, void, it must be vacated, is voided, cannot be used in any form or fashion because the process was not complied with. How could Mr. Ford and Mr. Ramjatan come to your radio station and tell Guyanese that the man could go back and use the very same process that the Chief Justice ruled that was not compliance with the law to carry out the verification, when the Chief Justice specifically said a tabulation of the statements of poll? Now, if they were doing that to bring comfort to their supporters that they will get an outcome that is desirable, which is rigged elections and installation of an illegitimate and illegal government, where the only recourse that the PPPC has is to go to an election petition because that is their game plan. Let me expose this really. The game plan was for falsified, fraudulent declarations. A president is sworn in, and the PPPC as an aggrieved party would have to file an election petition, and you have to live with that for the next 5 years because petitions don't be heard like what we saw happen in 2015. What this court case actually did was expose their rigging plan and halted it and put Guyana back on a path to sanity. Tomorrow, Mr. Mingo, when he starts that process, the Chief Justice says follow the law. Now, if when Mr. Mingo calls a number from a statement of poll, it's not consistent with what we have on a number, well then, that needs to be verified. He could say he's sticking with his number, but we raise an objection. The way to resolve that is by the request for a recount of the box on the question, which is allowed for under the law.
Well,
And that is what Roysdale Ford and Ramjatan is omitting to tell the Guyanese people, because they believe that Mr. Mingo could just deny capriciously, whimsically, without reasonableness. They believe that he could just say, I'm doing no recount, this is my declaration, and you get the president. But no, 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 no. The Chief Justice said today, giving way to all reasonableness, this process must be followed. So the whole interjection, and I want APNU AFC supporters to hear me clear, Mr. Ford, Mr. Ramjatan, and all of the PNC know the results of the election. They know if you go to the statements of poll, the PPPC has won this election with more than 16,000 votes. The use of the spreadsheet is to give the APNU AFC 20,000 more votes than they really got. And they can't show how they get those votes because those numbers are supposed to come from statements of poll. Even if they want to prepare new statements of poll got serial numbers. So the statement of poll that was used at Ramakrishna has a serial number. And all the parties supposed to get a copy with the same serial number because this came from Ramakrishna School. Or a statement of poll that was used at Charlestown Secondary School, which is right across the road, you got a serial number. So, if you got controversy as if it's the right statement or not the right statement, the way to solve the problem is by opening the boxes, counting the votes, and that is the final count. The law provides for that. But what Mr. Mingo did was that he made a fictitious declaration, and when the PPPC, through its counting agent, requested a recount, he denied the recount. Now, if you deny the recount, how could you resolve the differences in numbers? And he denied the recount using some whimsical and capricious grounds. But the Chief Justice is saying now, no, that's not the way it goes. If a party is agreed, you can't break up the place, you can't have a commotion at the command center. You have to note your objections. And by noon of the following day, when the declaration is made, you got put in and your request for a recount. So Mr. Mingo got to do two things tomorrow. And he better had listened to reasonableness. The first thing he has to do is to go back to the statements of poll. Secondly, if parties are aggrieved about his numbers and the statements of poll, a request for a recount got to be allowed. And that recount got to be done in the presence of all the parties entitled. It's not Mingo and a clerk.
Does that happen right away, or when does that happen?
Immediately after noon of the day after the declaration. That recount has to be granted. But you see, GCOM got to take some responsibility of operating properly. In 2015, there was a 1 vote difference in Region 8 to determine the member of parliament. A recount was requested and was denied. Could that be considered reasonable? In 2015, Melanie Marshall hid from Charles Ramson, who was the counting agent, so that she couldn't get the letter by noon the following day to request the recount. Just the other day after Mingo made his declaration, the office was locked up all morning. It's about 11:53 that Charles Ramson was able to deliver that request for a recount. And then it was denied on some technicality and all the rest of it. We're talking here about people's votes. We're talking here about transparency. And Mr. Ramjatan particularly must face his conscience, because he fought alongside the PPP with Cherry Jagan for democracy, for counting of votes at the place of poll, for free and fair elections. And David Granger, who's been lecturing Guyana about free, fair, and credible elections since the no confidence motion as an excuse of delaying elections by more than a year, he must take responsibility to ensure that we have credible elections. You know we're going to make it credible? If you got a number and I got a number, and we don't agree, we already know Mingo made a fictitious declaration. The way to give confidence to the system, in the presence of everybody, open the ballot box, let me count the votes, record it, and that is what is tabulated. That is the only process that could solve this problem. And the counseling from the lawyers that visited you here tonight to say that tomorrow Mingo could use a spreadsheet, and then he gets a number and he make a declaration, and lo and feel, go ahead and make a declaration, you get the president sworn in, and then
You only record.
the only recourse is an election petition. That is putting Guyana in a part of having an illegitimate government. You've heard the whole world has already spoken. I don't believe there's anybody else left to speak as it relates to stopping electoral fraud in Guyana. And I can't imagine, having had the court, and I believe every decent, God-fearing, patriotic Guyanese must say a big thank you to the Chief Justice for the manner in which she conducted herself, the swiftness with which she attended to the matter. She sat Saturday, Sunday, Tuesday, and delivered judgments on today, Wednesday. She must be applauded for that. The urgency, the meticulousness in which she dealt with the matter, the calm which she restored to the country, because you saw what was going on around the country. We're back on a path that could bring about sanity and give us a democratic government. That formula, as advocated by Ramjatan and Ford, is a recipe for disaster. And if that is the counsel that they're giving to Mr. Mingo, that tells all Guyanese they know fully well they have lost the election, they don't want a credible process of verification to go ahead. What they want is a false declaration made, and you put the PPP in a position where you could only challenge it by way of an election petition after. And I guarantee you, Leonard, the people of Guyana, the international community, the world will not allow that nonsense to take place in this dear land of Guyana tomorrow. So Ramjatan and Ford needs to go to bed and wake up with clean hearts and make up their minds to face the music and tell Mingo, you're a statutory officer. You're under oath and obligation to carry out your duties in a proper way. That is why you were slapped down heavily by the Chief Justice over the last 2 days in her ruling and in her judgment and all the questions she asked, because you did not comply with the law. So the only thing that could happen tomorrow is compliance with the law, tabulation, using the statements of poll, and if after that you still have controversy, the counting of the boxes, and that's where we are.
Well, thank you very much, sir, because that's definitely in contrast with what was raised by the two candidates for the APNO FC coalition, and they would have said that if there's controversy, if you want to call it that, it goes straight to an election petition and would bypass no recount.
No recount. So they've already determined that Mr. Mingo will not give a recount, because that's their counsel to ensure the rigging takes place. That is being exposed. That's why I'm glad that you invited us over tonight, so we could rebut this and expose the rigging plan, because the denial of a recount, which is what gives confidence to the whole process, credibility to the whole process, and solve all the controversy. Let's go to the votes in the box. They want to deny that so that they could get ahead with a swearing of a president, and then you go to the election petition. Don't you see what is intended here? The stealing of an election, the installation of an illegal and unlawful government by breaching the law, and you find willing and compliant partners. You know, it is Justice George's judgment in total, when it is written up, will make excellent reading.
A landmark case. It is a landmark.
Because when you read about the contradictions of the affidavit of Roxanne Myers and James Bond and Aubrey Norton, you will understand that the conspiracy that was being hatched, but it wasn't synchronized properly, because the madness and the rush to steal the elections, it was all exposed. And that will make very interesting reading.
Mr. Hamilton, and I thank you for that, Bishop. Mr. Hamilton, what is likely to be the game plan of the People's Progressive Party and the opposition tomorrow, heading into a place where they might be? What is the game plan for the?
Our game plan, Leonard, like it has been right through the campaign and through the election process, is to follow the law and the procedure, because that is the only way the country can rise. You know, I am told also Mr. Ford was on speaking this evening talking about a victory. I mean, when you read his judgment, I don't know why he would say that, you know. But the point is, for us, this judgment is not a victory for the PPP. This judgment is a victory for the people of Guyana. Because the young people, Leonard, people like you, you're a young man, I'm sure you thought that after 1992, this country would not have had to gone back to dealing with electoral malpractices and rigged election. I mean, think about it. The young people, they were spared that for 23 years and whatever. Now, they have to deal with the same issues that their parents had to deal with. So, our game plan is to cooperate, is to assist, is to ensure that the procedures and the rules that govern the Representation of the People Act are adhered to by the statutory officer, Mr. Clement Mingo. And I suspect all the other parties, that will be their game plan, and the diplomatic community, the observer missions, because they are clear on what the law is that govern elections issue, most especially issues about tabulation and verification of the votes. I couldn't tell you what the likely game plan will be tomorrow of Mr. Mingo. What is alarming, Leonard, is, you know, here you have GCOM that's supposed to be a reputable referee to run a process to elect a government. Today, GCOM is caught up, at least some senior functionaries, in a conspiracy with another political party to rig elections. And if GCOM is allowed to get away with this in cahoots with APNU, no more in this country, citizens and the world can rely on the Guyana Elections Commission, because what is the function that they're supposed to carry out? They ain't carrying it out. They're doing illegal and things that are not lawful. So it is important for the nation. You know, a lot of people believe that this fight is just, and that is how a PPP APNU fight. And every time Mr. Granger spoke, and also I see the people on Facebook, the APNU leadership, they are painting it or trying to sell that. But people are not silly. The diplomatic community, the international observers, all the senators and the congressmen and the foreign office in UK, all of those persons, Leonard, they are speaking to the issue of a credible election results, because we have gone past. Notably, in the first couple of statements from Commonwealth and OAS, they were speaking about the process. But you would note that subsequently, the statement spoke to Leonard that they have verifiable evidence of electoral fraud. Secondly, if you check the Foreign Office yesterday, the statement issued by the Foreign Secretary, he at all did not address GCOM. All the paragraphs, he addressed David Granger as president. He did not, because for them, whether we will have a legal president sworn in or an illegal one, rests in the hands of David Granger. Basically, that is what I deduce from what the Foreign Secretary was saying. They have gone past GCOM and whether they can deliver credible electoral results. So that is where we're at. You know, we expect the process to follow the law. We expect GCOM to cooperate and to make sure that transparency and accountability is the watchword in the room wherever this will happen. We expect GCOM to, if there are disagreements regarding the statements of poll between the RO and the political parties and observers and whoever, that we can once and for all settle it by opening the ballot boxes in contention and do a recount of the votes. That is our expectation.
So if you're now joining us, this is a special edition of the Elections Watch. I'm your host, Leonard Gildari, and what we have here tonight is two candidates for the People's Progressive Party Civic, that's the opposition, with Bishop Juan Edghill and Joseph,
Joseph Hamilton.
Joseph Hamilton. My apologies. I got stumbled.
You were about to say Harmon.
No. I'm very tired here. My apologies. But what you would have had here a few hours ago, the Chief Justice Roxanne George would have made some landmark decisions when it comes to the purported declaration by Region 4 returning officer Clement Mingo, and this is what she had to say in her judgment today. There's a breach of Section 84.1. There's been non-compliance. This vitiates the declaration. The declaration was unlawful. It is null, void, and of no effect. And she also said, I think that no persons are not required. The RO, that is a returning officer, has the discretion to decide who is to assist him. However, once any of those persons entitled to attend is in attendance, then the addition must be done in their presence. I want to ask, because one of the things that she would have indicated, and I'm reading it this way, is that the returning officer, the deputy returning officer, would have discretion to decide who's there or not. Did you hear that? Is this our interpretation of it?
The law spells out, and the Chief Justice cited the law, who is entitled to be there. The returning officer, deputy returning officer, a presiding officer, or any electoral clerk. These are all election officers. Representatives or counting agents representing various candidates or parties are entitled to be there. And in our context, both local and international observers. And she spelled that out clearly. There is no ambiguity where that is concerned. Who is entitled to be there? No, it can't be everybody. They got to be representative, right? But Leonard, I want to make a point here. On your program tonight, the excuse was made that the reason why the R.O. Mingo declared the results in the manner that he declared it is because of the mayhem that was taking place in the GCOM office. What could be further from the truth? The mayhem was because he wanted to declare without completing. The man declared the results during the day, the following day, but in his affidavit he told the court he was prepared to make a declaration anytime after 7:30 the night before. And an agreement was reached where the process will continue the next morning. The Chief Justice cited that the Deputy Chief Elections Officer in her affidavit deposed that there was an agreement. There was no dispute that the process using statements of poll would have continued the next morning. The man come in, ignored that agreement, and went to make a declaration. And he said the spreadsheet that he got it from a clerk, a Miss Miller, who made it up in his absence while he went to the hospital and was not feeling well. And the court heard there was no admission or denial. And because of that, there was some presumption of regularity, the argument that was made. But Mr. Mingo never said he added up the totals to declare the numbers that he declared. He depended on somebody else who did not have that statutory duty. And when Mr. Neil Boston argued about substantial compliance, the court threw that out. You got to comply with the law. So there was no mayhem that led to him declaring the results the way he did. The mayhem that they're referring to, which there was a ruckus, there was noise, there was protest, strong protest, was because of him attempting to declare the results without complying with Section 84, and that's why we went to the court. And we went to the court, we got an injunction, which has been made final. I hope they told the country that the injunctions that Justice Navendra Singh granted was made final today by Justice Roxanne George, Chief Justice acting, and that they have to comply with Section 84. You can't just pick up a spreadsheet, add up some numbers, and don't do it in a transparent manner. The Chief Justice explained, as a matter of fact, yesterday, she did ask Mr. Boston to explain what is the purpose of the persons entitled. Why there are persons who are entitled to be there? And he didn't want to say for the purpose of transparency, but she made the point, it is for the purpose of transparency. If you want to add up numbers, let the parties that are entitled to be there see your addition. Or like we say when we were going to school, show me your working. I mean, you could cheat the math and get a number, but show me the working, how you get the number. The PPPC has shown to the whole world they're working. We have posted up 879 statements of poll with numbers that you could go to our website and you could see the numbers. Let Mr. Mingo show you his working, or let APNU AFC show you their working, how they get their numbers.
Show me the work and show
Show me
us
the
the
work.
work.
Leonard, importantly, following on from Bishop Edghill is GCOM or APNU is yet to tell the Guyanese people how come Valda Lawrence's signature is on a statutory form of the Guyanese
Very
Elections
important
Commission.
point.
I mean, 9 regions declared, the only signature, rightfully so, on those declarations were the registration, the RO, returning officer of the district, and the stamp of the returning officer. In the case of Region 4, you have Mr. Mingo's signature, and you have the chairman of the People's National Congress, that is a part of APNU, a contesting party, that signature that is on the declaration, the Form 24. And either people are so ignorant or brazen that GCOM would put it on their website
And publish it
and publish
in
it,
the newspapers.
and the Chronicle, and would do the same. What is the statutory function of Valda Lawrence?
I
Vis-a-vis
asked the
GCOM.
question to the two gentlemen those here,
Yeah.
and I tried to capture it as much as possible, is what they said. They said that it is not, that is not normal. It happened for the other regions as well.
None.
We'll
Liars!
check the copies.
Leonard, let me tell you, I have impatience with lies. Don't believe me or Joe Hamilton. Let every Guyanese tonight go and check the newspapers. 9 regions, 1 signature. Region 4, 2. And you're going to sit down and tell the Guyanese people it's normal?
You guys
It's
are
happening in the other regions?
barefaced
What
liars.
nonsense is this?
But the point is, Leonard, for what purpose and what reason? If, let us assume for one, just argument's sake, if you have a declaration that, and nowhere in the law, it says that the Form 24, any party agent can sign on it. These are statutory forms that belongs to statutory officers of the Guyana Elections Commission. That has nothing to do with political types and candidates. Has nothing to do with it. And so for 2 lawyers to come to this program or wherever and lie so barefacedly to the Guyanese people, it is so pathetic, you know, that they would say that it is nothing unusual. Is Valda Lawrence the chief elections officer? Is she the deputy chief election officer? Is she a commissioner? What is she in
Or
GCOM?
let her say where she was when she signed the form.
And
And
those are
why,
questions.
and why no other political party rep was called to sign the form? Where was the form signed? At GCOM or at Congress Place? Let her come and tell the public where did she affix her signature to that form. Because at all material times, the presidential candidate of the PPPC was in the command center. The general secretary and leader of the list of the PPPC was in the command center. The presidential candidate for the Liberty and Justice Party was there. You had the presidential candidate, the young lady, Dr. Asha Kisoon, was there. You had representatives of ANOC there. Why didn't Mingo call all of them and say, sign? Why only one?
Well, those are very, very tough questions, and of course we'll have to continue.
Transparency requires answers to that.
And we'll have to continue asking those questions. And so what you're hearing here, ladies and gentlemen, and our viewers from wherever you are, whether in Guyana or overseas, looking at us, listening to us on 99.1, 99.5 Kaieteur Radio, what the conclusions are that they're different narratives that are emerging here this evening. And so you would hear, as far as the coalition is concerned, that tomorrow, if there are any issues when the process resumes at the returning officer, the Ashman's building on High and Hatfield Street, then the only course of action would be to election petition. You have the People's Progressive Party, Civic is making it very clear that there are several things that could happen here, including a total recount, and so this is absolute nonsense that they're saying. what the coalition is trying to peddle at the moment. So obviously the different narratives that are coming out here, and this is all coming out also emerging from the court case that would have at least partially concluded today, where Chief Justice Roxanne George would have made several orders, and including ordering the returning officer claimant Mingo to go back to the drawing board and say, look, you have to ensure that the procedures that you're using, that the declaration that you have done, it is unlawful, and you have to go back and go through the process once more. And the procedures that you're using is in keeping with the law. And the procedures is this, that you do it according to the law, which is in the presence of not only the agents and the party officials, but also maybe the observers. Although it's not very clear whether the observers are there, but it is up to his discretion. But what is very clear, that tomorrow morning is going to be very critical at the High and Hatfield Street building there, where everybody is gathered, and the People's Progressive Party is very clear as to what the procedures are. And so it will be entering, I think, on the 10th day tomorrow. It's more than a week now. We're heading into another holiday on Monday, and we're likely not to have any, or maybe, unless there's some resolution, not have an announcement again before this weekend here. That's how it's headed, because from all indications, there are different views from the different parties that are involved over this issue. Gentlemen, obviously you have thousands of supporters who are paying attention, who are anxious for a resolution to this entire matter. We know what would have played out last Friday. Are you prepared, let's say, that the results go south, and would you be able to accept those results if the process that is followed tomorrow indicated that your party has not emerged as the winner?
The process that entails a final count by the opening of the boxes, I think the party is very clear that once we go back to the boxes and the numbers are against us, we will accept that the numbers are against us. But you can't have a declaration without the opportunity of a final count.
And you reserve the right for that.
And you reserve the right, and the law provides for a final count. As a matter of fact, the declaration of the RO cannot be made tomorrow and become final, even if we go through a verification process. You have until noon of the next day to make a request for a recount. So you could make a declaration based upon this preliminary count, this is the numbers. It becomes final only if we don't request a recount and those numbers are not changed. But once there is a recount that is requested, he can transmit that information to Lowenfield for Lowenfield to tabulate the 10 regions to go to the commission with a final result. You have to wait on the final count to be completed. And it would appear that the APNU and their leaders are seeking to use a statutory officer in a political manner by giving some assurance that the statutory officer, which was cited by the court for non-compliance with the law already under Section 84, will not grant that recount. That is like taking away people's rights. So the PPPC will not sit down and just fold our arms and say, oh boy, these people cheat us. Look, they're going to declare this result without giving us a final count. The whole world is watching. Look, 5 nations have been robbed of the presence of their chief political leaders because the CARICOM 5 leaders are here in Guyana today. 5 nations of the CARICOM are without their chief political leaders attending to their nation's business, and they are attending to Guyana's business. Do we need people to come from overseas to tell us how to conduct our affairs in Guyana? Where is the sense of integrity? Where is the sense of leadership and purpose and taking responsibility for your actions? And that is why the British Foreign Secretary cited Granger in all of his paragraphs. Because somebody got to take responsibility. I'm sure you aired on your radio Mr. Granger's address to the nation about how he will obey the laws and always abide by the Constitution. But nowhere in that address did he acknowledge the presence of the international observers and the international community, or even what was being said by the international community. He wants to behave as if that don't exist. Because of selfish reasons, he will plunge all of us into trouble. The APNU AFC did it before when they refused in Parliament, when they had the one-seat majority, when we were a minority government, to give free passage to the anti-money laundering and the countering of the financing of terrorism amendment bill. They withheld their vote, and Guyana was sanctioned. We had to go for review. We were grey-listed. Some people say blacklisted. We suffer consequences. It became difficult for banking arrangements. It became difficult for simple money transfers, the questions you had to answer, the obligations you had to meet. And now, look, today, 80 international companies signed a joint statement saying to ExxonMobil and all oil companies, you can't do business with an illegitimate government. We are now a fledgling oil-producing nation, and you got 80 businesses, international businesses around the world,
And
organizations, and all the IFIs and international bodies are actually saying, you can't do business with these people. For what? Granger has a handsome pension, and that's one of the reasons why you have a president's pension and benefit package, because he's not going to become a pauper. Let democracy take its course. He will be taken care of. The law protects him. He has immunities for all that he did while he was in government. He got a good pension. He got benefits. Are you going to put a country through this because you lost an election? You're going to cause a country to be damaged? You're putting people against people? And I was upset when I learned tonight that Kemraj Ramzatan, the Minister of Public Security, made certain statements here tonight on radio about the protests of the people, and you're going to have hooligans running around and all the rest of it, almost trying to demonize the outrage of people. You are inflicting pain on a nation, and when it screams, you say, shut up, you're a hooligan. That is what they're doing. We had the devil's job as leaders of the PPPC to quell those protests across the country. The party put out a statement, the presidential candidate put out a statement calling for calm and restraint because you are inflicting pain. This APNU AFC cabal, by their actions and their dictatorial behavior since the passage of the no confidence motion, has insulted the intelligence of the Guyanese people. They have done things that have hurt the psyche of this nation. They have brought distrust among our people just because they want to hold on to power and the perks of office. This cannot be allowed. This is a group of 40 or so desperate people who must be exposed. And by the way, the world has taken a particular course that is not just Granger will face the sanctions. It's all those who prop him up. All those who prop him up. Because the world has taken a particular position about people who seize power without the democratic process. And this is what all the international bodies and the international observers have been warning against. Do not allow for a transition of government without a credible conclusion of the electoral results of Region 4, because there are going to be consequences. And serious consequences. I believe what should happen now, Leonard, all the APNU AFC supporters listening to this program, you don't have to agree with Edghill and Hamilton, but you need to pick up the phone and call every APNU leader that you know and say, hey, stand down. This is going to be bad for all of us. Yes, they need to call Vola Lawrence and call the James Bonds and call the Harmons and say, hey, we understand what's going on. Y'all lose the thing, go back to the drawing board, and let's continue to struggle. Don't let me break up this country. You know, the fear of rigged elections before the elections existed. The fear of rigged elections existed before the elections. And here we are caught red-handed with people who are supposed to be impartial, facilitating a process to rig the elections, and you expect people to be quiet. And then you talk and you want to call them hooligans, and you're going to have a whole lot of Indians running around the country wanting to beat people and all the rest of it. Mr. Ramjatan should be very careful about what he says, because there is life after elections 2020 for all of us. And all of us will be sanctioned not just by the international community, but by the people we claim to represent, what we did in this very crucial time. You are not tested by where you stand in the good times. A leadership is how you behave in these times of crisis, the restraint you exercise, the responsible actions you take, the magnanimous positions that you adopt. Leadership is being scrutinized by all Guyanese at home and abroad, and the world is watching on to see the true leaders emerge at this time.
I do thank you for that sober words and some very stern warnings, if you want to put it that way. Mr. Hamilton, in closing, what would the PVPC say to the people of Guyana, its supporters, in this time when there's a system, the court has made it very, very clear, and there's a system the parties are watching? In terms of calm and peace, what would you say to the people of Guyana?
Well, Leonard, as my colleague he has indicated, we have said to our supporters and the people of Guyana to be calm. Our expectation is the system will work like the system worked today. The judiciary worked when people had their own apprehensions and fears. The judiciary worked today. We would hope that tomorrow the independent arbiter in this matter, that is the Guyana Elections Commission, work tomorrow in the interest of all Guyanese people. Let me say this also, that officers, whether they be judicial officers, electoral officers, or otherwise, they have to be careful and they have to be mindful, Leonard, because in the early days, when people seized power via rigged elections or a coup, the international community, diplomatic community used to just focus on the people in government. Today, they have moved beyond that. They deal with all the facilitators, whether in the judiciary or in the military arm or the police arm of the state that facilitated a takeover of a government or facilitated a fraudulent election to impose a government on people. And therefore, and they have extended it further, not just the person, they deal also with families of the persons. And therefore, all the people, Ramjatan and Ford and all them, they should be mindful that that is how the world deals with people who take power via rigged elections, and how this country will suffer. We would only hope that they recognize they're taking us down a road that can bring no good to this country. We have indicated to the Guyanese people that we won these elections, and we have put out there the statements of poll that we collected from GCOM, so that the Guyanese people can look at it, they can read, they can tabulate the numbers. APNU is yet to do that, GCOM is yet to do that, to give Guyanese people an understanding as to how the election results worked out. So Leonard, I would only hope that, as I said, GCOM will do its job tomorrow, as indicated by the Chief Justice. They would be reasonable. I would only hope that Mr. Mingo would use the statement of poll as directed by the Chief Justice, and don't worry Ramjatan and Ford, who were suggesting that he could just go back to the spreadsheet. I mean, Leonard, the same. How can you, the logic is illogical that the declaration was thrown out because he didn't follow the procedure. And one of the ways Mingo breached the procedure is by introducing a spreadsheet and not complete the process with a statement of vote. And you have lawyers saying to him that tomorrow you could return to the same spreadsheet operation. It don't make any sense. But I suspect, as I have said before, the major problem Apno FC they have, Leonard, from since the 3rd of March at about noon or the latest 2 o'clock, is that they don't know how to say to their supporters that they lost the election. They're grappling with that up to this moment. I think that is the problem they have. And therefore, they everyday manufacture narratives to feed their supporters. But we are sure and we are confident that we won. And as Bishop Edghill has said earlier, the proof is in the pudding, as they always say. If you say you win, let us agree that we open the boxes if we have any complication or contention at the level of the verification and tabulation. And that would once and for all settle the matter. It can be settled in a day because you can come all of those votes in one day, the Region 4 votes. In one day it can be settled and the Guyanese people will be clearer who won, and we can go on with our lives. You would know more than I do because you're a man in the media, how this has affected people's lives. They don't know whether to move or not to move because they don't know what is. We want this to end, and we hope that good sense will prevail, and GCOM, as the arbiter in this matter, seek to have it ended in a way whereby it reflects, importantly, the will of the people. And as the chairman of CARICOM has said, CARICOM position is that all votes must be counted.
I do thank you for that. And so here we would have had Joseph Hamilton and Bishop Juan Edghill, candidates for the People's Progressive Party Civic. And we head back to the GCOM Operations Center for Region 4 tomorrow morning, just after 9, with the process has been ordered by the court to restart or to continue. And so their the Region 4 returning officer, Clement Mingo, is going to be there, and he's supposed to be leading what would be the exercise to tabulate those figures, those polling stations of Region 4, the largest region. 9 regions would have already been declared. So this one region is the one that is outstanding, and so that's supposed to restart tomorrow morning. So there's been this has been a day that has been pretty, how you say it, the narratives that have been coming out has going south and east and west in different directions, and so the opposition party and the coalitions have been claiming different things. The government, the coalition, has been making it very clear that when it goes back tomorrow morning, there's a couple of options for parties who don't agree with the way that things goes, and that is you go straight into what you call the elections petition, and that would not happen overnight. It could probably take years. However, it's the main opposition party, the People's Progressive Party Civic, is saying unacceptable. That is not their understanding. That the procedure is very, very clear, and that is if there are any objections that would be raised with regards to the results of polling stations in Region 4, that they have the right to ask for a recount, and they have 24 hours to do that. So there can be no immediate declarations until that process is finished. So the process of declaration by Return Officer Mingo would not be final until those processes are completed. So there you have it, more developments, more drama on day 9 and 10. And so we're going to be back with you tomorrow. It's been a very long day. Everybody was tuned into the court today to listen to what Chief Justice Roxanne George would have said, and she's made it very clear that the declarations by Clement Mingo, returning officer of Division 4, Region 4, last Thursday was unlawful. And so there you have it. So we're going to be back with you tomorrow. This day has been a devastating day for Guyana in that we would have also had news too, I must tell you. that we would have had our first coronavirus death. And I know that there's a statement here that was just issued by the government. And we're going to come back to that in a very short while. But we want to take this opportunity to say thank you, gentlemen, Bishop Juan Edghill and Mr. Joseph Hamilton, candidates to the People's Progressive Party. We would, of course, extend the invitation to you guys, like we did to the other parties, to come back. And, as the situation develops or come to a resolution, to give us your take on things. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Leonard,
Thank you
for
very
having
much,
us.
Leonard, and I believe in Guyana. And I believe Guyanese.
I think we all do, sir. I think we all
And
do.
Guyanese will do the right thing tomorrow, and we will get ahead with this.
Thank you very much, sir. Mr. Hamilton.